the only live and uncut podcast which has an international audience and and comes live from Surrey. Let me introduce you to Ayd Instone. I've known Ayd a long time. When I first met Ayd, he was running his own graphics agency, and he actually produced my first book, Power Negotiating, for me, and edited it and produced the fantastic front cover. Ayd's spoken internationally on creativity, but 12 years ago he decided to change careers, take a degree at Oxford University, and teach teenagers, which must have been some real negotiations, Ayd, teaching teenagers. As a lifelong learner, Ayd is halfway through another degree, his second degree, and this time on artificial intelligence, which he's going to talk to us about today. Ayd's keen to point out that ChatGPT is something that we need to know about, something not to be scared of, and it's here and it's real. Ayd, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Tell
Derek.
us a little bit about you and
Well,
AI.
let me say, so I've been teaching physics for the past 12 years up to A level, and as part of that, I run after school clubs and stuff like that, and I for quite a few years I run an after school computing club, and I didn't do it in a normal way. I did it by bringing in my first computer, which was a Commodore VIC-20, and getting it working again. And then I found ones on eBay and other places, and a few people donated them. So I repaired these old computers. So I was teaching computing and computer science with 1980s technology, and it was more interesting because the kids were getting to grip with, getting to grasp with what a computer actually was. They were you're too far removed when you're with these magical devices. You can't take them apart and see what's inside. So that's what we were doing, looking at electronics, looking at computing. And so tonight I'm going to lean on a little bit of that. There's going to be a little bit of sort of information that some of you might have a glimpse of, but I think it will make the story make more sense. So artificial intelligence is this latest buzzword, but there's something else going on, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, Derek's called to talk AI, or artificial intelligence, which is my initials, by the way. AI, very handy. Tool, threat, or teammate. That's what Derek's called it. I've all got a subtitle as well. It's a sort of a pun, but you'll sort of see why I've done that by the end. Called "The Chips Are Down." That's the theme for tonight. In that, we're up against it. Something is going on, and the chips are down, and we've got to see what it is and see what we can do with it. So let's start at the beginning. AI, artificial intelligence, we know it's everywhere. It's in all the headlines. It seems to have come overnight. It seems to be everywhere. It's writing emails for us. It's editing text. It's making all those funny images and turning everybody into toys and all the other sort of nonsense stuff that we've seen. And it appears as if it appeared out of nowhere, but that's not the case. So that's my first sort of message for us today, that it's actually been among us for a very long time. We just didn't call it what it is called today. Like your sat-nav. So your sat-nav automatically reroutes and chooses a different route. Netflix will tell you which films you might like. Spotify will say, well, that's the genre he likes. Let's give her more of this one. Amazon, you like people who like this, these sort of things. So all of those tools are using what we should be calling artificial intelligence, but nobody was telling us that's what it was doing. And of course, the most early ones that we've probably encountered were autocorrect in writing Word and email and that type of thing, where it's doing something for you, usually when something you didn't want it to do. So the chips are down is my sort of title, and there's a reason for that, and it links to this. I'll show you a picture in just a moment, but in 1978, Horizon on the BBC put on a programme called The Chips Are Down. That's where I got the title from, and it was about computers. Now this is 1978, and a few of us were there. But in 1978, you can back me up on this, Derek. I think I'm accurate. Nobody had a computer, right? Now, most businesses probably didn't. Maybe a couple did. Schools certainly didn't. Individuals at home, very rare, unless there was some particular reason for you to have a computer and nobody had it. So for this program to be on, and it's quite a dramatic program, it talks about how computers are coming. They're here, whether you like it or not. And why I've picked on that as an example, because it's almost the same tone that we're talking about artificial intelligence now. The thing is already here, but we're talking as if it's coming, but it actually is already here. So in this Horizon program, which you can watch on iPlayer, it's actually up there now. It's quite a good watch. It describes the technology that shops are using. Now we know that shops didn't use barcodes till 1986, the electronic point of sale, but shops were using computers in 1978 to order stock, to manage the warehouse and this type of thing. So the computers were there in the background. We just didn't know that the avalanche, or the tsunami rather, was coming. So now we've got a situation where I've mentioned a few examples. Let's just a couple more. Credit card fraud, spam emails. What else have I got? All those sort of things are automatically worked out with this thing that we're calling artificial intelligence. But where did it come from? And that's why I wanted to explain a little bit. But we've got to get a word right first. What do I mean by intelligence? So if this, Derek, I would throw it open to the floor to see if there was any intelligence in the room. But I know we were all silent, so we went. But what is our definition of intelligence? Oh, that's Derek, actually. Derek, what is intelligence?
I'd say it's brain power, Aid. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, and sorting a few things out and juggling them around and coming out with the right answer.
I think that's more or less the dictionary definition, isn't it? So I'm going to sort of technologicalize it a little bit and say that we could say that intelligence is taking some information with a sensor and then acting upon it. Right. So that's how we used to say what intelligence was. And we would say that, these phones are smart devices. The words smart, intelligence were almost interchangeable because they weren't passive, that they took some data in from the outside world and did something with it. So the simplest example of that is the thermostat. So it senses that the temperature is too high, too low. Then it does something, turns the heating on or the air conditioning or whatever it does. So that's the basic level of artificial intelligence. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about just a sensor that turns something on, turns something off. So what do I really mean? We're missing something in our definition of intelligence, and that is prediction. So our devices, the smart devices, will take some input in, a smart input from a sensor, like the heat or the accelerometer in your phone or or an input on a keyboard, taking some input in and do something with it. But they're not guessing what to do next. They're not guessing if there isn't enough data. So this is where our modern interpretation of what artificial intelligence is. It's what do you do if you don't have all the data? So here's an example. There's a classic thing in artificial intelligence training when people are learning it. It's called, should I play tennis? It doesn't have to be tennis, but it is in the example. Should I play tennis? So we've got some data. We've got, it was raining, it was cloudy, it was sunny, it was foggy, it was humid. We've got that data for a set of days, and we also know whether we could play tennis on those days. So we've got some historical data. Now, it's a fairly simple task. It's quite boring, but you can actually create what's called a decision tree to think, well, when it was raining, did I play tennis? No, I didn't. When it was cloudy, did I? Yes, I did. So you can create a decision tree of things that happen, things that could happen, and then does it lead to tennis? Or what's the probability of it leading to you playing tennis? And you can do the maths of this. It's actually GCSE maths, but it is quite fiddly, and you end up with this massive diagram with numbers all over it. But you could work it out. You could put that now into a computer, and you could put that small amount of data into a computer to say, next Tuesday, this is the weather report, can I play tennis? And it would work out the probability of it. So we could call that artificial intelligence, but there's something else missing, that it is predicting because it's filling a gap because it didn't know what the weather is on these particular days. It is predicting, but it's not learning. So we need to add that into our mix as well. So we've got taking data from the environment and making a decision, but now we've got predicting something that we didn't have data for, and now we've got the fourth one, and remembering, or a better definition that will be learning. So we've got a machine that can learn from what it's done and put that back into its data. So now we've got what our modern definition of artificial intelligence is. So now we could use it for millions of uses. And we'll get onto the chat GPT thing in a minute. A lot of people think that artificial intelligence is just chat GPT or just Claude, Gemini and all the chatbots. But I want to sidestep them for a minute, because the definition is a lot broader and a lot more useful. And it's those hidden uses, the more useful uses, are the ones that aren't quite as obvious. So medical diagnosis is one we're making great strides in. So an example could be a cancerous tumour, or is it a malignant mole or something like that, that we can examine the images of it, and a consultant doctor would look at those images and from his or her experience work out if it was cancerous or not. That takes years of experience. And the doctor has probably only seen 1,000 moles, 1,000 tumours. But the computer could be given millions of pictures, millions and millions of pictures of these of tumours and not tumours, and then create its own decision tree. So this is what I said about the play tennis example. We would create the decision tree to say, if it's this, do that, if it's this, do that. But the learning part of artificial intelligence is the computer makes that tree, right? So it makes the prediction pathway, and we call that a model. So it works out, is this a tumour or isn't it a tumour, based on seeing millions of them. So that's a very good use of it. Another good use would be in fraud detection, especially online. What is the behaviour of the user looking like? Does it look like fraud behaviour? Speech recognition is an obvious one, and then of course the one that we all know, reading text, analysing images, creating text, creating images. So all of those can be done if the computer creates its own model. It creates its own answers to fill in the gaps. So that's where we're talking about when I say artificial intelligence. It's a broad term that means those four things: taking in some data, making a decision, making its own decision tree, therefore learning, and then being able to predict and remember what it's done. So here's an example of how ChatGPT works. I'm sure you all know this. So if I say to Derek, fish and, what comes next?
Chips.
Right. Why do you know that?
I've been programmed by my parents from the age of 3.
It's because, yeah, exactly, because you've the most likely word is going to be that, and this is how not just ChatGPT and the other chatbots, but this is how all those systems work. They're probability machines. What's the most likely thing to come next in a sentence, or in a number, or in a weather report, or whatever it is? What's the most likely thing that's going to come? So machine learning, that's where we've got to, with that we can now predict, because we've seen loads of sentences, fish and dogs. Now, we haven't seen that very much. Fish and cats, we've seen a couple of that, but fish and chips is the main one. So we've seen that, the computer knows that, and statistically that's more likely to be the next word. Now, if we trained our chat bot just on a few hundred sentences, or a few thousand sentences, or even a million sentences, it wouldn't be very bright. It would be like, it'd be like Vodafones. It wouldn't be very useful at all. So the systems we've got now are what we call deep learning. So that's where it's not just looking at the next predicted word, it's looking at grammar, it's looking at sentence structure, it's looking at context, and there's layers. There are millions of layers. So we're talking billions and billions and billions of sentences. So hopefully now I've given you a picture of why we call it artificial intelligence, and the fact that it's the machine creating its own map. That's what's key. And it's not magic. But why is it happening now? Why is it happening today? What are the ingredients that have made it happen today and not made it happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or in the future? Why is it happening now? And this is the bit I want to show you. A couple of little pictures which might give us a bit of an insight. So let's have a look at this. Tell me Derek, if you can see.
Yeah, it's now up. That's you just need to make it. That's it. Open the screen.
Okay, that was the title of this Horizon program. I just mentioned it before, and I'm going to show you a couple of stills from it. So look at this picture here. It's just a screen capture from the TV show, and it's a computer circuit board, and you can see on it the chips that I'm talking about. Can you see them there? Those black things with little legs. You see them there? Let's close in on one there. So you can see there's a person's fingerprint, and you can see a chip that is just nesting on his finger end there. We're talking about very small things. That's a zoom in of it. So I'm going to stop sharing because I want to show you one in real life. I've been fiddling with it and I've dropped it. Here it is. Okay, here it is. So this is a computer chip. You can see all those legs on it. Can you see it from the little light?
Yeah, we can see that, Ayd.
Those legs on it there, those are the connectors. The black part is just insulation to keep it cool. The actual chip is the thing that was on that guy's finger, and it is a little square inside it. Can you see there?
Yes. Yep, we can see
So
that.
that is what a computer chip is. This is quite an old one. It's quite a chunky old one. But what that is really, this is billions of switches. And we call those switches transistors. This is one transistor. There is. So this is just one transistor. It's got 3 little legs on it. So this is what makes our world. A transistor. It's a digital switch. It allows a signal, a voltage, to be on or off. That's what it does. That's all it does. But it can control it. So a signal will be on or off. So we call this a transistor, and we could say that this holds a bit of data. Right? And by a bit of data, I actually mean that literally 1 bit, because that's what we call a bit of data, which is quite handy. A bit. It's on or off. It's 5 volts or 0 volts. It's on or off. So that's what one transistor looks like. But the ability to shrink them down means we can get millions or billions on this chip. And this is when it gets interesting. So here's my computer from 1982. So this is my first computer. It's a Commodore VIC-20. And this is the one I was using I've got a class set of them that I repaired. And this is the ones I used in my computer club. This has 5K. Now that means it's got 5 kilobytes. So it's got roughly 5, it's a bit more, but roughly 5,000 bytes. A byte is 8 bits. So this is a hard drive that I've got some backup stuff on it. And this is a terabyte. So I'm talking about this having in its memory 5 kilobytes, 5,000 bytes, and this having 1 trillion bytes. So what I'm trying to get to you is that the scale has changed dramatically. And just in case I'm a Commodore fan, but just in case you're a Sinclair, I've also got that one as well. So
wow.
Yeah. And the first computer used in schools was the BBC, which is this one. So these are the first computers that went into school. Britain was the first country in the world to put computers in schools, and this was the one that they did it with. They're amazing machines. Okay, so we've got the idea of a bit being one little bit of information, and we can store it on a transistor, and we can put our transistors. There's a picture coming back. Has it come back? No,
not yet.
All right. Sorry, guys. Just have to push the button again. Should come up. Is it shared yet?
Not yet. No.
Why is it not doing it then? Sorry, guys. There's
Have you got shared screen and clicked on?
Yeah.
It's coming. Yeah, we got it now. You just need to put that on full screen, Ayd.
Here we go. So there's our chip with billions of transistors on it. Remember, this is 1978. This is a modern one. Now you can see now that a micron is a millionth of a meter. And you hope you can see it downstairs down the bottom, doesn't it? I told Derek there'd be some maths, but this is what I mean by it. Numbers. Okay, so 0.06 millimeters. That's very, very small. That's that little part of the screen where it's measuring there. We've got hundreds of thousands of transistors in that little area, just where it says 60 microns. So an actual chip now contains a monstrous amount of those little transistors I showed you, miniaturized down, all containing 1 bit of information. Now look at this graph. We all love a graph. Bottom left-hand corner, 1970. So you can see that the computers of the day had about 1,000 to 5,000 transistors in them. Now my VIC-20 it comes along in 1976. It says a 6502 chip there. It's got about 5,000 transistors in it. You can work that way up that graph. We won't do it now, but you can see when the Pentium came in and other chips came in. And right at the top of the graph he only goes up to 2020, this one, but you can see a pattern there. Anybody can see a pattern. The line goes up proportionally. As the years go up, the number of transitions double every 2 years. And this is called Moore's law. So our computers are getting bigger. Well, they're actually tiny, but they're getting more and more transistors. every 2 years they double. This is called Moore's law. So what does this mean? Look at this thing. This is the most powerful chip on the planet at the moment. It has got, look at that number, 2.6 trillion transistors. So that's 2.6 trillion bits of data that it will hold. It's very expensive, but that's it. Now, put this in perspective for us. How much information is on the internet? Right? Now, I guess as we get a bit of numbers for you. So can you see that? 181 zettabytes of data. That's 181 trillion gigabytes. It doesn't mean anything to us, but it's a monstrous amount of data. But it is that many bits. That's a 10 with the 24 zeros after it. So that's how many bits of data are floating about on our internet. And that's how many transistors it needs to run. And that's how many of my original computers will be needed to store that amount of data. If I was using 1982 technology, that's how many of those I would need. That's a quintillion. That would be insane. So this is how computers have changed. They've got smaller. There's more transistors in them. And interesting, I just started messing about with the numbers. If I got 36 quintillion VIC-20s and I put them end to end, as in put one after the other and line them all up to see how far it would reach 6% into the Milky Way. It would go past 60 million stars. So we're talking about a scale that is just unimaginable of how small computers have got and how many transistors are now in them. Now look at this fact. 2.5 quintillion bytes is added every day to the internet. Now that is 2 million terabytes. You know, I held up my little hard drive earlier, my 1 terabyte hard drive. So 2 million of those is added to the internet data every single day. So the internet is this massive data that is growing and growing. I'm going to cut that out. So what have we got? We have got computers that are exponentially getting smaller, and exponentially amount of transistors in them, but also the speed is the other key factor to this. So Derek, how many operations can you do per second? How many things can you do per second?
2 or 3, Ayd?
2 or 3 is the right answer. Yeah, it is true. People think they can multitask, they can't. So it's about 2 or 3 things that you can do per second. We're not very fast at all. And in fact, my VIC-20 is faster than you, and it can do 1 million things per second. And there it is, being advertised by William Shatner back in the day. So 1 million things it can do per second. So it's pretty fast, but it's not the fastest thing. Because this MacBook that I'm using as my presenting tool, it can do 3 billion things per second. 3 billion things per second compared to Derek's 3. But what about that chip I just showed you? The Hewlett-Packard has made the fastest computer in the world. I had to change my slide because it was only announced recently, this thing. And it can do 2.7 quintillion things per second. I mean, it just boggles what that means. There's the number in yellow. That's how many things it can do per second, which means it's 860 million times faster than my Mac. 860 million times faster than our normal PCs that we're using. So we've got these two things that are going on. The computers now are incredibly compact with these transistors in, and they are incredibly fast. I've just been trying to demonstrate how fast and how many transistors are in there, because that's relevant. We're closing in on the amount of neurons in the brain in these demonstrations. Now, if I ask ChatGPT to do something, apart from using a lot of energy, it will take it 0.01 seconds to do it. But look how many operations it's carried out in that 10 trillion operations just to decode my sentence and do something with it. This is how deep and how deep and how deep this learning has gone. This is how deep these layers are. If I got my Mac to try to do that operation, it would take about an hour. So I'll stop sharing now. Can I stop sharing? Come back to the picture. Are we back? Okay, so this is the secret then. Speed and transistors. That's what's made this. That's what's made this thing possible today. So what can we use it for? And some people put something in the chats. What have they put? Oh, some people. Mark said he's also got interesting initials. I'm glad they're not rude, but they're all right. And
Yeah.
Antone has said he used to use install chips in military radios in the 70s, in around this period of time we've been talking. Yeah, and they have got smaller since. He's exactly right. So, what can we do with deep learning? So, that's the phrase I've been using to say artificial intelligence. That just means you've got something smart. You've got taking some data in, you're making a prediction. But deep learning means layers, 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 layers. So, we mentioned tumours earlier. Let's have a couple more uses for you. Drug discoveries. That's an interesting one. To simulate the effects of medicines using artificial intelligence, a very useful tool. Scientific literature analysis. There are so many papers that have been published recently. Oh, not recent. Well, they're published every single day. Nobody's got time to read them all. And if we could get the computer to read them, it might find some correlations in this physics paper, this medical paper. It might come up with a theory that we haven't been able to distill ourselves. These are good uses of it. Now, we all know about smartwatches and monitoring our health. We use those all the time. Your step monitoring, your heart monitoring, those sort of things. Good uses of it. We can use artificial intelligence to monitor machines in factories, wind turbines, energy production, agricultural production to make it efficient. These are all good, what I would class as good uses. There's not much wrong with them, these ideas. We could use it for town planning. We could use it for traffic management. We could use it for autonomous vehicles. That's a bit contentious, but we need this level of deep processing to take this data in and predict. We could use it for how a policy or a plan that you've got, how it would impact. We could run simulations. We could use wildlife conservation with it. We could monitor weather. So all of these tools, they're great uses of artificial intelligence and not a chatbot in sight. That's the angle I've been trying to sell you on, to say that if OpenAI, Anthropic, these other companies, if they did go bust, which they might well, if they did go bust, artificial intelligence remains. It's only that chatbot that dies. And that's important. We've turned a corner. It would take us millions of pounds to recreate ChatGPT, which we won't be doing. But artificial intelligence is something that we all got access to. It's here to stay. The chips are down. We've got these tools. We can use them if we go about it in the right way. But there are problems. And that's the next bit I want to talk to you about. There are problems. And some of them are quite pernicious. Ones I've come across recently is who gets a loan. Now, normally, or in the past, Derek would attain to this. You'd go through various checks, you'd go through various questions, this sort of thing. But what happens if we automate that process? What happens if we automate the process of who gets a loan? That the computer decides. It's already happening. Now, the problem with that is, what if it's wrong? What if the computer says, no, you can't get a mortgage to a potential client? If it was Derek doing that for you, he'd be able to say, well, I know why. It's because you're in debt, or it's because you're in prison, or whatever it is. But the computer won't be able to do that. And you've heard this phrase, maybe you've heard this phrase before, the phrase of being a black box. We know the thing's made a decision, but we don't know why it made that decision, because it's the one that made up the rules. It's the one that made the decision tree that I mentioned earlier. It's the one that's created its model. It's the one that adds the weights and balances to its choices. And it's the one that has made that choice because of its training data. And we can't then go and say, well, why did you do that? So this is a big area in artificial intelligence research of how can you reverse engineer it? How can you hack it? How can you get into there to find out why it makes these choices? And at the moment, there's not a clear-cut way of doing it. What about HR? What about who gets a job? And I don't know if any of you people, guys out there, have actually experienced this yet, but you can be now, your CV could be analysed by a computer system. But not only that, you could be interviewed by it as well. And I did one just for a laugh, just to see what it was like. And I was interviewed by a robot. So it was a human voice, but it wasn't a human. And it was asking me all the questions, and it took all the information and it put it all together. I uploaded my CV, it read that, it asked me questions about my CV, and it came up with conclusions. It wasn't for a particular job, it was just like a test one. But that's
It turned you down. It turned you down, Aid.
yeah.
Your body language looks like it.
Yeah, no. The disappointing thing that it did do that thing. It did do the thing that ChatGPT does. It says, "Oh, this is great. You've got amazing experience." So it was actually a nice experience talking to this thing, but it wasn't for a particular job. It was just a trial to see what it was like. But people are using these things and not getting the job. And again, there's nobody to ask. There's no. How do we know the machine is not jettisoning people because? Oh, the person looked, their eyes were movement. They looked to the left too many times. That's classified as shifty. Don't give them the job. We don't know. Then we've got further problems. What about, which is true for the HR thing, what about bias? Now, we need to admit that we're biased. Of course we are. Our culture is biased. Our experiences are biased because we're who we are in the world we live in, doing what we've done. And there are worse evidences of that. Like sexism and racism, but I don't just mean that. I just mean that we're all biased in that we've grown up in a particular culture, and if we feed that culture into the training model, then that's what it knows. So it doesn't know about other things, it only knows the information that we've put in. So an example is, let's train a model on art. Let's train it on all the paintings, and we'll use the National Gallery in London as our source because that's full of all the best paintings. So we'll show it all the best paintings from the National Gallery, and then the computer then knows about art. But the problem is that the amount of women artists that are represented in the National Gallery in London is 1%.
Wow.
But there's a lot more women painters, but they're not represented by that gallery. Now, we might not realise that bias is built in there, and we've just duplicated the bias into the model. So that's where the problems are, and we've seen it in sort of pseudo-racist context where the machine has an artificial intelligence way of turning the hand dryer on when you put your hand underneath it because it's looking at the contrast of the hand to the floor, but the floor's black tiles, so a white hand is going to turn it on for me. But a guy with a black hand, a darker skin, is not going to turn the hand dryer on. That's racist, isn't it? Because of the biased data. So we've got to be aware of this. And we've also got to be aware that we are homogenizing everything. If we put the whole of the internet into a system to train the model on the internet, we know who's written the internet, and it's not representative of everybody. Most of the contributors are men, most of them are American, most of them are white. Most of them are male. So we've got a bias in the data that we've actually got in the first place. So there's a couple of problems. And I haven't even mentioned hallucinations yet, which is, as you must have seen if you've been playing with a chatbot, a hallucination is where the thing makes something up. Derek saw it. I think, Derek, did you have it? Were we talking about it? Where you ask it who's Derek Arden, who's Ayd Instone, and it gives quite a detailed response. But it did make up loads of books that I'd written that I hadn't written. And that's not a bug, that's a feature. It's because the thing is predicting, not thinking. The thing is answering your question. It's a bit like a student in a school who doesn't want to admit they're wrong. It's not quite like that because even that is emotive. So it's not going to say, I don't know. It will never, ever say, I don't know. It will, if it doesn't know, it will make something up. And it doesn't know it's making it up because it's not a brain and it's not thinking. The thing is now so fluent that we now think that it's conscious and we think it's like us. All that's telling us really is that we're not as clever as we thought we were, and that to mimic a human interaction was a lot simpler. To model language was a lot simpler than we thought. That's the truth of the matter. It doesn't mean that the thing is inherently geniusly clever. It is that it's just still predicting, and we're finding the flaws in it. In the comments, Mark's saying hallucination seems to be due to our failure to develop efficient prompts. He's right. Yeah, and the only way that we've seen so far for some of these chatbots to negate spilling out the wrong thing, there's loads of stories about them saying all sorts of manner of horrible things, is to try to build into the system some type of filter that spots keywords. There's no other way of doing it yet because it doesn't even know how certain it is on what it's giving you. If it's made a decision, it's 100% certain on that decision. So we have to redesign the whole thing to put uncertainty in there for it to say, I'm not sure. It's a completely separate programming task. Other problems we got is the environmental cost. It costs. Oh, I can't remember what the number is now, but it's between 10 and 100 times more energy use than a Google search, which isn't dramatically more, but the training is. The training part of to make ChatGPT has not only cost millions of dollars to actually do it, it has cost millions of dollars in water to keep it cool and in energy to power it. And we know this. We've heard these stories of it's using the same amount of power as Las Vegas, just to deal with our prompts, just to make us look like action figures or whatever nonsense we're doing. Other problems we got would be if we automate everything, who are we? If we automate tasks and our expertise, who are we? What is the point of us? And an example would be I've been driving for however many decades it is. So I can drive an automatic car, I can drive a manual car. Now, if I was in a self-driving car, and that car couldn't cope, and it passed control back to me as a driver, I might, even though it would be hardly possible with my reaction times, but I might be able to get out of the situation. But my daughter has only just started to drive. She wouldn't have that experience. And if she goes on, or if our grandchildren go on learning to drive by not learning to drive, by just going in autonomous vehicles, they'll never gain that expertise. The machine will never be able to hand it back to them. We've seen this with aircraft, with autopilots, where we've got pilots who haven't had years of experience like they would have done 20, 30 years ago. They're literally asleep at the wheel, or whatever they call it in an aircraft, and it's controls handed back to them. They don't have that experience to be able to fix the problem, because problem solving is something that humans do best by dealing with the extremes, by dealing with the big problems. So if we acquiesce and we hand over control to a system, we won't meet those problems. We'll know how to do the general stuff. It's not that we're just going to be completely de-skilled, because we won't be, but we won't know what to do when there's a big problem, when the extremes happen. So that's a problem we've got. And the final problem I want to mention, although there's other ones, but the final one before we try to make it into a conclusion, is that if we start replacing people, as some companies are hinting of doing, with automated systems, let's say law as an example, although computer programming would work as well, but let's say law. So let's replace the junior roles with a system that does that junior role. Now, we've seen this before, because if you go back, as you may well have been in 1978, let's say, you go into an office, it's full of secretaries, it's full of typists, and they have been replaced by the PC. So we don't have them anymore. We might have a PA, but we don't have the secretary, a whole typing pool. It's been replaced by the computer. But the executive who's using that computer still knows his or her stuff. Now, if we replace the juniors with the computer, the apprentices, then we lose that bottom layer. Now, eventually the top layer, the experts, will eventually retire, but there's nobody going to come through because we've replaced those junior roles. And companies are thinking of doing it. They are doing it because why are they doing it? Because of money. Because it's cheaper to have a computer than to train apprentices. But it's a very short sighted decision. So those are the real problems. So if you ask me about computers taking over, AI taking over the world and killing us all, I'm not really going to engage with that as much as I would want to engage with the labour cost, which is more pertinent and more real, and that's what will hit first, long before there's any big problem. It's a bit like saying, what about the population problem on Mars? That's what Hannah Fry, the television scientist, said. What about the population problem on Mars? It's not something that we're going to need to worry ourselves with because we haven't even got to Mars yet. So the problems with AI are today's problems, which is labour, the labour market. We've seen certain jobs that can be wiped out, and we can talk about them if we need to. The idea of creative industries being affected by cognitive work being replaced by a system. So That's where I see the problem. Not that some Terminator type style thing, but the idea that it's going to displace jobs. Now, people jump in and they say, but hang on, we've been here before. We've been here before. When a new technology comes along, people find new work. And that's true. But let's have a little think about it. The Industrial Revolution, it replaced muscle. And all the different aspects of the Industrial Revolution replaced muscle. But what we're talking about now is a system, an artificial intelligence system replaces cognition. It replaces brain power. And that's different. So if we were to compare, look at the big disruptors in the past. So let's just go recent past, the internet. So the internet came along and it transformed jobs, it transformed business. And what it meant that we devalued speed, because everything was so quick. So we didn't really have finding information is now so quick. So we didn't really value speed anymore because we could get everything quick. Let's go back a bit further, computers. Now that devalued organizational skills because the computer then organizes everything for us. Go back a bit further, electricity, the revolution of that devalued time because now you can get your workers to work at night. So every big technology that comes along, it devalues something in that change. Let's go back further. The steam engine, that devalued power because suddenly we've got unlimited power. We can transport heavy things around. We can make machines work on their own. So power had lost its sting. Go back further. The printing press. The printing press meant we devalued distribution because suddenly we can get books everywhere. Do you see the point I'm trying to make here? That every time we get a disruptive technology, we lose something. So how far back do we have to go to get a disruptor that is going to be as big as this one? And I think we go back further. We need to go back to 6000 BC and the invention of writing. And what that did, it devalued memory because we didn't need to remember anything anymore because we could write it down. So I would say that artificial intelligence is the disruptor, but it's a disruptor on the scale of, not the ones I mentioned, but it's on the scale of the invention of writing. That's going to be the transformation. And we need to think about, what do we value in this new age? It's not about us thinking, it's not about the machines becoming more human. It's about, do we risk becoming machines? So
can I stop you there because we're nearly out of time? I just wanted to talk about one or two practical uses of it. And, if you've got your album cover there, do you want to show that? Those of you that don't know, Ayd is a very accomplished musician, and he's recorded lots of records. And I think you've got a new album cover there, which is produced by AI, isn't it?
Well, it's not produced by AI, and this is the point I'm making. That I said some negative stuff there, but if we should be positive, that we can use artificial intelligence to enhance the artist, to enhance our business, to enhance our finances, enhance everything. So that was my latest record, is this one. But I've put them on records. Now this is you might think, why has he done that? But that was always my dream, to get onto an actual vinyl record. But why I'm mentioning it is because of the AI tools that I used in putting it together. So this particular one, this is from the mid-90s. And so I could get the master tapes that I've got, which were recorded on tape, and I could use AI to separate out the tracks, the drums, the bass, the vocals, the guitars. It's a much simpler, not as great version of what Peter Jackson did with the Beatles material when he did the Get Back films and the reunion single Now and Then, where you split the track into the separate instruments. Then I can remix it. So that was the first. I used AI for that. So that's not putting anybody out of a job. That's enhancing my back catalogue. Then I used AI to balance the mix. I can use that in the software on my computer. I got it to write the sleeve notes, which is sort of a bit cheeky, but I thought, it's on an LP. I wanted to have little sleeve notes, and I thought it'd be nice to have a review. But I can't go back to 1998 and get a review because, well, there was one, but it wasn't very good. So why not get the ChatGPT to write me a review in the style of Mojo magazine, as if it was 1998, which is what it did. So that's in there as well. And I also, from Derek mentioned, graphic design. So I can use the photographs that I've got, I can clean them up. I can remove the hairs from them and the scratches, because the photos in my photo album are all scratched now from being in the album. So these new tools that are available to artists, available to business executives, that make things more efficient. That's, I would say, is the positive side of it. We've mentioned the negative side of it. But yeah, it's a tool that we can use to enhance our efficiency without taking anything away. And also these albums, they were made on this system that's an online system, and there isn't really any humans involved in it. It's sort of a print-on-demand system where I upload the artwork, I upload the music. The thing shows me on the screen a mock-up of what it's going to look like, so I know it's going to be good. Then I can order one, or a fan could go on the website and order one. They haven't done that, of course. Or I could order 50 or 100 to sell at a gig. Again, if I could dream of audiences that size. But the whole thing's automated. So that would enable me or anyone as an artist to proliferate their art. So I'd put that in the good camp. I'd put that in the thing of an enabling more people to be more productive. That would be an example of that.
Brilliant, Ayd. Well, we're out of time. I hope you'll come back and join us again. But have you got one last tip for people watching this on YouTube, listening to this on the Negotiators podcast, of how we can use this positively? Because I use ChatGPT 5.2 all the time, and it blows me away. But one tip from you.
I would say is that now we've talked about how it works. We know it's predictive power. It's not magic. It's recognizing patterns. Now, the computer can recognize patterns. So I would be thinking all the time, as the thing changes, as it develops, and you're using it for business or you're using it for home, always be aware that it's only humans that can understand why those patterns matter. So my main message is about keeping your agency in this thing, and that you can use it as a tool, but remember, it's you that's important. It's your agency that's important. So if you're writing, for example, don't get it to respond to your LinkedIn posts. Don't get it to write your emails. Get it to do a draft. Put the information in as a good prompt that someone mentioned in the comments there, and then edit it yourself. Get your own ideas first. Use it as a tool, like you'd use a spell checker. So I would do not hand over your consciousness to a computer. Keep that, but as you said in your title, make it a teammate, make it a partner, make it part of the band, but don't hand over control to it.
Brilliant, Ayd. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll come back. Will you stay on for a little while and answer a few questions?
Of course, yeah. I just feel guilty. There's a few points, there's a few chats, and we've ignored them.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, can I ask everyone to give Ayd another round of applause in the normal Monday night live way? And Ayd, if anyone wants Ayd, it's just Google him or ChatGPT 5.2 him, ask for Ayd Instone. And just for everybody watching or listening to this, just ask AI to write a bio of yourself, because you might be quite surprised with what it comes up with. So thanks, Ayd, and we look forward to seeing you shortly later on in the year.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.